500 feet above the surface of the moon, visibility drops to zero. Lunar dust is kicking up everywhere around the lander, and the automated descent is steering them toward a crater filled with boulders. The fuel gauge hits 5%. Back in Houston, the controllers tense up. They start a countdown for 30 seconds of fuel remaining. The entire room braces to abort the mission and pull the crew back into orbit. This monitor tracks the telemetry from the capsule, showing Neil Armstrong's heart rate sitting entirely steady at exactly 110 beats per minute amid the flashing alarms. That steady rhythm came from absolute concentrated focus. To understand how a human mind operates that calmly while sitting on the edge of catastrophe, we have to look past the space race itself. The world saw a smiling hero and an unflappable pilot. Almost no one knew what the man inside the spacesuit was actually carrying. In January 1962, Armstrong's 2-year-old daughter, Karen, died from a brain tumor. He never expressed his grief outwardly. For years, he completely avoided talking about her illness. He retreated entirely into himself, locking the pain away so thoroughly that some of his closest colleagues did not even know he had a daughter. He returned to work immediately. Seeking a place to channel that immense, quiet energy, he applied to a brand new initiative, the astronaut program. This ability to compartmentalize didn't replace his technical brilliance. It gave him a way to apply it. By locking away his personal world, he developed an emotional buffer that allowed him to stay analytical when the machinery around him began to fail. This emotional detachment became a highly practical survival mechanism. It showed up as early as his combat service in the skies over Korea. In 1951, while flying a bombing run a mere 500 feet above the ground, his jet struck an enemy trap cable. The impact ripped 6 feet off his right wing. Ejecting over enemy territory meant capture. He suppressed the panic, calculated the necessary wind speeds, limped the broken aircraft toward a friendly airfield, and managed a crash landing in a rice paddy field. That measured reflex scaled up perfectly to the lethal environment of spaceflight. The ultimate test of his nerve arrived during the Gemini 8 mission. This schematic demonstrates the mechanical failure. Right after docking with a target vehicle, a single thruster jammed in the open position. The capsule started spinning out of control at more than 1 full revolution per second, generating extreme centrifugal force that threatened to knock the crew unconscious. With seconds left before passing out, Armstrong diagnosed the problem. He made a high-risk call and activated the radiatory control system thrusters, a secondary system reserved specifically for returning to Earth's atmosphere. The opposing thrusters fired, and the spinning stopped. The margin for error was completely absent. His capacity to shut down fear and execute a complex mechanical override saved their lives. The space race was filled with intense personalities. Astronauts aggressively campaigned for the best assignments in an environment where the stakes were incredibly grim, particularly after a cabin fire killed 3 astronauts during an Apollo 1 ground test. Through it all, Armstrong remained silent. When it came time to select the commander for the first lunar landing, NASA management understood his temperament. They picked Armstrong specifically because he possessed zero ego. He would never treat a milestone belonging to humanity as an excuse for personal glory. His preparation matched that humility. While others trained to win, Armstrong spent 14-hour days simulating worst-case scenarios, obsessing entirely over how to recover when the spacecraft systems failed. That exact preparation allowed him to take manual control of the Eagle lander when its computers steered them toward that massive boulder field. He guided the ship over the hazards, bringing it down safely onto the dust at Tranquility Base, right as the final 30-second fuel warning blared. At the most terrifying precipice of the 20th century, success required a pilot devoid of pride and insulated against fear. Stepping onto the surface, he delivered a phrase heard by an estimated 650 million people. He instantly became the most famous human being alive. Yet, if you look at the visual record of the mission, there is a glaring absence. There is almost no clear photographic evidence of Neil Armstrong on the moon. The astronaut looking back at you in the iconic images is Buzz Aldrin. Armstrong spent his time on the surface, holding the camera and doing the work. He cared nothing about being immortalized. Back on Earth, the public frenzy was suffocating. Strangers forged his signature on documents, and a barber even swept up his hair to sell for thousands of dollars. The world demanded a highly visible, accessible hero. Armstrong desperately wanted peace. This tension forced him to pull back even further, entering a much quieter, lonelier final act. The same emotional wall that protected him from the terrors of space carried a heavy cost back home. Decades of keeping his feelings locked away eventually eroded his personal life, leading to the collapse of his marriage. Friends watched him struggle with isolation. There were periods of deep mental distress where he would sit at a table, staring silently for hours, entirely unable to close the gap between himself and the people who cared about him. He passed away in 2012 at the age of 82. Rejecting any grand national monument or public spectacle, he asked for his ashes to be committed to the ocean, just like an ordinary Navy pilot. The moon landing remains a symbol of collective human ingenuity, but in the final seconds of the descent, the mission relied on the specific composure of a pilot who had spent a lifetime learning how to operate in the silence he created for himself.